Welcome everybody. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID secure manner. This has included requests for all attendees to have taken an LFD test within 48 hours of the meeting, the use of the NHS Track and Trace app or attendee log, 2 metres social distancing, the wearing of masks when not seated, a one-way system in the Guildhall and a temperature check upon arrival. Limited public seating has been made available, however this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Can I please ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting and to wear a face covering unless seated. Please only use seats marked with a green circle. These seats have been allocated to ensure 2 metres social distancing. If a continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at the Queen Victoria statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone be on camera, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disturbs the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. Right, we'll make some introductions now. Would you like to start, Councillor Bosher?
Councillor Simon Bosher.
Councillor Heaney?
I'm Councillor Heaney. I'm the Labour Group spokesman on traffic and transportation.
Thank you. Tristan?
Thank you. Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Michelle?
Michelle Love, Safer Travel Manager.
Wayne?
Wayne Layton, Finance Manager.
Joe?
Joe Hammond, Senior Road Safety Officer.
Kirsty?
Hi, Kirsty Routledge from the Transport Strategy team.
Thank you. And Felicity?
Felicity Tidbury, Transport Planning Manager.
And Karen?
Karen Martin, Democratic Services.
Thank you. I don't think we need any apologies because the 2 opposition spokespeople are here. I think there are apologies, though, from some of the officers, aren't there? Have you got those, Karen, or shall Felicity read them out?
I've got them noted.
Okay,
Councillor.
thank you. Felicity, do you want to say who's not here? Or?
Yeah, sure. So Pam Turton, Assistant Director of Transport, and Hayley Chivers, Strategic Transport Planner, aren't able to be present due to COVID today.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of members' interests? Councillor Heaney?
No declaration of interest.
Councillor Bosher?
None from me.
Lovely, thank you. Right, we'll go on to the first item, item number 3 on the in the papers. Car club provision. Are you introducing this, Felicity? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to provide the results of the resident and business car club surveys undertaken between September and November 2021. Also to recommend priority locations for a car club to take forward through a tender process, and finally to provide an updated timeframe for the delivery of a car club in the city. So just to give you a little bit of background, there were two targeted research surveys that were undertaken, one for residents and one for businesses, and this was to understand the demand for a car club in Portsmouth. If the recommendations of this report are approved today, a full procurement process will be undertaken to appoint a car club provider. The details of the scheme, including the exact location of parking bays and the number of vehicles to be introduced, will be determined with the appointed car club supplier. Following this, a report will be brought back to Traffic and Transportation in the summer this year, detailing the scheme and seeking permission for a designated car club parking bay to be brought forward through the formal traffic regulation order process. Therefore, the recommendations of this report are that the results of the resident and business car club survey are noted, that approval for a procurement exercise for a car club to initially prioritise the wards of St Jude's, Central Southsea, Eastleigh and Craneswater and St Thomas, And it's noted that a report with the car club scheme details to be brought back to Traffic and Transportation following a tender exercise in the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I right in thinking that you did the survey across the city, but the 4 areas that came out top were the areas that you've listed in here? Is that right? Oh, thank you, Kirsty. Thank you. It's just so that if anybody's watching from home, they know how it's been done and how we come to this particular conclusion. Councillor Heaney, any questions, any comments?
I mean, I have one question. I don't know if you managed to pick it up, but I know one of the local residents from St Jude Ward actually wrote an email to me this morning saying that they supported the idea. Yeah. But asked a question at the end about how we might measure the success of the scheme. Now, maybe we can't do that until we've done the tender exercise, but I don't know if anyone is able to think about how we might measure the success of a car club scheme. But that was the question she asked in her email.
Right. Kirsty, have you got any ideas for that? Can you speak up a bit louder, please? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's obviously it's difficult to set out some very clear criteria now, but I think just to know that we're thinking about what might be a success. Yeah. I mean, broadly, I certainly support the introduction of the car club, and the procurement exercise will obviously go into more detail. There will be some detailed questions which we can't answer now, which I think will be more appropriately given when we come back in the summer. But yes, very happy to see this come forward and to see the levels of support there are. I'm just wondering if when we're getting nearer the process of starting it, some pre-publicity about the fact that the car club is likely to be launched might be worthwhile in those particular areas that we've targeted, because clearly the survey will have alerted people, but then it'll go very quiet and people will think, oh, well, nothing's happening. So attracting some interest around people who might be interested to do that before we probably set it going formally might be something that we want to consider. You know, generate a bit of interest, because a bit like electric vehicles, people know about them and they're keen and they're sort of ready and waiting in some respects. So it'd be good if we had something that sort of kick-started that process at some point. But obviously that's for something to do later on.
Well, I think there needs to be sort of wide communication at different levels. One is that this is going to be investigated, then when it's in, and then feedback all the way along the line, because obviously other areas we hope will be interested as well at some other point in time. Anything else, Councillor Heaney? No? Councillor Berkshire.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm with Graham and probably yourself. I think it's a positive move and I support it. I guess most of the questions that I have probably relate more to the technicalities around any such scheme, and they're probably better asked as and when a more technical document actually comes forward. I think I've expressed before, these will probably have their own bays. There's been talk about electric vehicles as well, in which case if there's electric points at some of these bays, are they available to the general public or exclusively for car club cars, where these bays are going to be, because essentially they're going to be taking general parking off the street. There's a lot of questions around the mechanics of how it's going to work that I'm probably more interested in, but the principle behind such a scheme I'm supportive of. I think it's something that we should be exploring, certainly in an island city, I think is probably the phrase to use. But I will probably wait for the technical report to come forward as to how any operator is likely to implement this and how it's actually going to be run. And I think probably all of us will probably have more questions that need answers at that point.
But I think it'd be useful if the questions you've got be sent to officers now, because maybe some of those can be asked before you actually appoint, a company that's going to run it, so that we know that certain things are going to be in place, and others, as you say, will be raised later on.
Essentially, Lynn, they are around those sorts of things. How a dedicated bay is going to be allocated, where dedicated bays are going to be, how many, and how's it going to work in that respect. Because I think I've expressed before, we see people get exercised with parking pressures about having to walk 3 or 4 roads to park their car. But the difference there is it's their car. So they will walk to it and park it and walk back to their property. If it's an electric vehicle that they've got to walk several streets to, are they actually going to use a car club available vehicle? It's understanding those sorts of mechanisms about siting it, how it's going to be implemented, how the parking is going to be protected. Is it going to be like an electric vehicle charging point bay, or a disabled bay, if you like, in that respect, and how it actually works? It's those sorts of questions that I've generally got. It's understanding how this is going to be implemented around the city to make it a success, essentially, without impinging too much on an already pressured road network from a parking point of view.
Anything else? No? Thank you, Kirsty and Felicity. I'm so pleased. I mean, this has been put on the back burners because of COVID. I mean, we were sort of going down that road a long time ago. So I'm very pleased that it's coming forward, and as fast as we can. I had an email from Claire Seek, who's very keen on. She actually set one up, and she's saying how much it's improved her life, that she's got rid of the second car, and I think it's the second car, and she's using the car club. So that'd be good, really good. Thank you. So yes, I'm really happy to accept the recommendations, all of them. And now we go on to next item, which I believe is, I get that. So many papers are these. Item number 4, which is electric vehicle on-street residential charge point scheme. And in the absence of Hayley Chivers, you're going to tell us about this, aren't you, Felicity?
Yes, of course. Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to consider the public responses to the Traffic Regulation Order 137/2021. So for the proposed designated electric vehicle charging bays in 2 locations, including Waverley Grove and Highland Street. So to provide you with a bit of background, in 2021, Portsmouth City Council started the installation of the second phase of the on-street charging scheme, following successfully receiving funding. Following approval at the Traffic and Transportation in October 2020, 60 charge points have been approved to be installed, with 20 already in place and the remaining planned to be installed shortly. 2 charge points proposed required a traffic regulation order to be resubmitted and are the subject of this report. So with known demand at both Highland Street and Waverley Grove, in November 2021, these sites were formally consulted via a traffic regulation order. The results of the consultation are summarised in section 4 of the report. Each street received 1 response in support of the proposal, with Highland Street also receiving 1 objection and Waverley Grove receiving 5 objections. Appendix B of the report shows the anonymised responses that were received. So the objections received for Highland Street and Waverley Grove were carefully considered, and feedback around parking and personal safety were taken into consideration. However, the recommendations of this paper are that the formal consent should be given for the installation of designated electric vehicle charging bays as detailed in Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bosher.
Thanks, Councillor Stagg. This is essentially a very localised report, and we're talking about 2 streets and their views on whether they want an electric charging point or not. So it's entirely up to you how you make this decision in respect of that. but certainly if you look at Waverley Grove, and I'm reasonably familiar with Waverley Grove and that area around there, it is a high-pressure area from a point of view of on-street parking, and that's what the objections generally are too. Hence the reason you've got, 5 times as many objections as you have those people in support. So, tough one on that one. I don't know whether there was any alternative site in the near vicinity, around near the park or whatever, but I guess the pressure of Waverley Road being essentially no parking for its entirety doesn't really help the side streets too much. Highland Street I'm not overly familiar with, I have to say, but certainly I can see that the Waverley Grove one is going to present some logistical problems, certainly going forward, and probably some private vehicles actually taking that space, whether they're electric or otherwise.
Do you want to comment on that, Felicity, or...?
Yeah, of course. So obviously we understand the concerns of the people objecting, and I think it's about providing that balance, isn't it, between the electric vehicle infrastructure and obviously recognising parking congestion in the area as well. So that was considered. We have looked at other EV infrastructure in that area. So obviously the one that's closest proximity is Wimbledon Park Road. Having a look at the usage data, that is one of the highest electric vehicle charging points in the city in terms of usage, and looking at the next phase of EV charging as well, we do have a lot of requests and demand in that area. You're right in terms of Waverley Road, we are quite restricted as to where we could put a bay, and that's why we're putting forward Waverley Grove at this time.
Sorry, the Wimbledon Park one, that's actually right at the far end of Wimbledon. It's not at the Waverley Road end, is it? So it's not even within reasonable distance of Waverley Grove to be able to say there's one available already, isn't it? Hence, we've got this here.
Yeah, that's right. It is quite some distance, but that's the closest one. So just to give you a reference point.
Yes, one thing I want to add that I raised in our briefing, and that is that as the number of the ownership of electric vehicles increases, there's going to be more demand. Therefore, people are going to have to share, because there's going to be a long while before, if ever, eventually electric vehicles will overtake petrol and diesel vehicles, but it's going to be a long time. So people are going to share, and I think this is already happening. I know of one road in North End where the residents among themselves have established their own rota, that one resident will charge a vehicle, I don't know, on 3 particular evenings or whatever it is in the week, and another one will do on another 3, and so on. And I think that's the way to go. And I did ask Felicity, and I think you're doing that, aren't you, producing a map to show where these charging points are, because we don't want trailing cables all over pavements as the number of electric vehicles increases. And there's no alternative for the majority of houses in Portsmouth, certainly on the island. It's slightly different on the mainland because you've got a bit more space. But going through some of these objections, people seem to think that by putting an electric charging point in, you're actually removing a parking space. But in reality, what you're doing, you're exchanging one car for another. That the car that is going in that parking space would be going somewhere else if another car was in it. Do you know what I mean? But I do think there is a problem with the amount of time that people will be there. I've got a huge argument going on in one of.
I think you're right in what you're saying, but with the city and largely the UK still dominated by the internal combustion engine, those people that have, if you like, a traditional vehicle view it as somewhere they are not allowed to park, so they will view it in that way of being removing of parking. And we're not going to change that view, I don't think, until we reach that tipping point where electric vehicles are certainly on a par or close to being on a par with the internal combustion engine, and I don't think we're anywhere near that yet.
No, I don't think so either, but I think it's a teething problem. I think it'll be one of those things that people will eventually make agreements with each other, and it will help sort itself out in time, because if you have, at the moment, say if you've got one electric vehicle in a road, and in 2 years' time you've got 5, then you don't necessarily need 5 electric charging points, because people can organise between themselves when they charge their vehicles, because very few vehicles need to be charged completely overnight every night for the majority of people. But I do think that we have to sort of, I don't know how we enforce it, actually, that they should only be there when they're charging their vehicles, because if somebody comes home from work at sort of 7 o'clock at night and charges the car for, 6 hours, so at 1 o'clock in the morning he or she is not going to go out and move the vehicle. So I think we've tried, Felicity's obviously got some answer here.
Yeah, can I just come in on that point? So it does outline in section 3.17 of the report that the bays are enforceable and a penalty charge notice can be issued if the vehicle's not connected to the supply.
Yes, I know they are enforceable, but the actual physical ability to I suppose you've got to make a note. So the CEO has got to be there twice, making a note of when the car is charging. So it's not an easy thing, but I think it'll even itself out in time. And it's a case of trying to get people to change the way they think.
I'm just curious, Felicity, on how that actually works. So the CEOs are obviously going to be doing this enforcement side of it, I would imagine, and I would imagine they could probably do it at the same time they're doing residence parking zones, because Waverley Grove is in the residence parking zone. Is it essentially the car is connected to the charge point, or is it has to be charging? Because there are two aspects, I suppose there's more than that. How do they know it's charging? Because I've not actually physically seen one of these. We've got quite a few in Drayton and Farlington, but they all tend to be private ones and bolted on houses. Whether they can actually tell, because the cynic might suggest, I've got an electric vehicle, I'll come park in that space, claim it as mine, stick the cable into the machine, whether it needs a charge or not, and therefore I've got myself a parking space. But similarly, if that vehicle is in that space and it's on charge, so it's legitimate to start with, and it reaches its full charge, and then the CEO comes along after it's reached its full charge, do we give any latitude to the owner of the vehicle who might not appreciate that the car has reached a full charge and end up with a ticket when they were actually legitimately charging it to start with?
I think that's a really good question, and one I'll need to come back to you on with the detail, but my understanding is that a PCN can be issued if it's not connected to the power supply, but I'll come back to you on the specific points about if CEOs know when it's fully charged, if that's okay.
I'm not trying to be negative about this, but I think there are issues that we need to be looking at now and addressing, or planning to address, in the not too distant future. Any other comments?
Again, I totally agree with you, Lynn. I think you're right on that aspect. And I have to say, I mean, this was introduced when I was the Cabinet member about doing this. And I think these questions about impact on parking and how it was enforceable were questions that were being asked back then, and always knew that they were potentially going to be an issue. So I think as we are growing the network, I think we need to have a better understanding, notwithstanding the fact that if we get asked questions about how is it enforceable and when is it enforceable, it would be nice to actually understand that, because if we don't know the answers, you can bet your bottom dollar that some of the residents probably don't know the answers as well.
Thank you. Councillor Heaney.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lynn. I mean, the one on Waverley Grove is obviously a bit of a problem because you've got more objections, and I can understand why they're saying that. In fact, I had a resident contact me last night to complain about an EV bay, which they said is often empty and then takes a space on the road they're in, and I can see why they complain about that. I was just wondering if we do any assessment when we're looking at roads about if it's in a residence parking zone, how many vehicles are registered for the residence parking zone in that particular road, because obviously it does vary road to road. There will be some with multiple vehicles, some with less multiple vehicles, and whether that road has any particular pressures on it in respect to the number of vehicles who might want to park in that, given, but of course zones cover more than just one road, so people will move around. But I wonder if that's something we might consider, if there's a road that has quite a lot of vehicles registered for the parking zone, that maybe that's not a suitable road for having an EV point in. I don't know whether we do that or not. So that's really the only comment I have about that, about balancing the different interests, really.
I think Wokerley Grove in particular needs to be kept an eye on. I'm not saying monitored as such, but I think listen to what's happening. But there are many alternatives. I mean, if we're going to go down the road of electric cars, and we're a city of terraced houses predominantly, there is no other alternative apart from trailing cables from people's houses, which is a safety issue. So I think we've got to work our way around it somehow or other. It's a task for you, Felicity. But I'm happy to go. I want to note and accept and understand the objections, but I think I would approve the recommendations to move forward with it, because I think it is important that we do roll out the infrastructure as much as we can, so that we can accommodate cleaner, better vehicles. So I go with the recommendation. Thank you. And agenda item 5, which is TRO for Mayfield School. Now, who's doing that? Is that you, Michelle?
Joe will be presenting the report, Councillor Stagg, and I will be here to offer support if required.
Sorry, Joe. I just assume that Michelle does anything to do with ropes, schools and...
Nearly,
I try to
not
avoid
everything. The purpose of the report is to consider the public response to TRO 119-2021 in relation to proposed weighting restrictions on Mayfield Road, which are intended to facilitate an improved crossing facility for the new school entrance. The recommendation of the report is that the proposed weighting restrictions are introduced on the south side of Mayfield Road as per the TRO. To provide some background, the environment around Mayfield School has quite a complex variety of issues, including unsafe parking near junctions, poor sightlines for pedestrians, extensive building works relating to the new school, and a newly established school entrance. The change in layout of the school in 2021 and the resulted change in design lines for pedestrians and students accessing the site requires intervention to provide a safer area to cross the road. TRO 119-2021 supports the construction of a build-out in line with number 160 Mayfield Road. These build-outs will shorten the distance required for pedestrians to cross to the new school entrance, improve sight lines for those crossing, and reduce the width of the carriageway at this location, reducing speeds of motorised traffic. The existing school crossing patroller will be relocated to the new build-out to support this new infrastructure. 21 days of consultation for TRO took place from 23rd of October to the 13th of November. One objection was received, and this objection was carefully considered and investigated, but the recommendation for the report remains that the measures outlined in TRO 119 are implemented. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you want to say anything now, Michelle, or not? You don't have to.
No, just to say that Joe has succinctly summarised everything in that report.
Good, lovely, thank you. Councillor Heaney.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very straightforward proposal, not in an area obviously that I represent, but about providing a safe crossing to a school. So I think it's to be supported. I did want to ask a question as to whether this covers more than one portfolio holder or not.
Thank you. Councillor Bosher.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stagg. We've sort of already discussed this, but looking at the objector, perhaps I'll just ask a couple of questions, if I may, that I probably already know the answers to. Point 5, one of the residents is registered disabled and has a marked bay just next to the site of your proposed structure. What mitigation have you put in place to ensure you don't impact their access and quality of life? Am I right in saying that this does not impact on that disabled space?
Yeah, so we've undertaken vehicle tracking to ensure that entry and exit of the disabled space is unaffected, and the build-out will provide some space alongside the disabled bay, which could previously been parked in by a car, so effectively there might be a bit more space than there was before.
Fabulous. There is another point 4 here, and I'm not sure anybody can answer, is what mitigation is in place for noise and impact on privacy for residents with the concentration of foot traffic at this point. The noise from the school at breakout times already exceeds 75 dB, well, it sounds like he's already got his noise tests done, but he doesn't say at what distance. But what is the mitigation that if any, is relevant that we put in place? Or is this what I would describe as the regular ant track to the entrant exit of the school?
Yeah, so the number of students entering and exiting the school hasn't increased due to these measures.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're putting in a defined crossing point rather than just continuous crossing up and down the school. So there will be a concentration of students crossing at that point. There's not any planned mitigation at this stage for this project because the measures themselves don't create noise, and that's not something that we would fund within this, but I understand that there's kind of ongoing conversations with the school as to noise created by the school and movements around the school, so it's not considered as part of this TRO.
Presumably we've been working with the school and had our own officers on site to make sure that we get this build out in the most popular place, shall we say, from a crossing point of view.
Yeah, representatives of the school have been involved in the design.
Yeah, and the only other thing, the little image I had in the report suggests that this build out, it looks like it goes all the way to the centre of the road. I'm presuming that is for illustrative purposes only, and that it doesn't do that.
That's correct. It doesn't go further than the current line of parked cars.
So we've still got two-way traffic at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, fine. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, I'm supportive of what you're looking to do.
Yes.
I've got no problem.
Yeah, I think it's needed, very much needed. I mean, I go up there quite frequently. At the end of the day, it is a nightmare. I've never been there early in the morning, I must admit, but it is with cars stopping here, there and everywhere, and kids all over the place. And of course the real worry now is because you've got little ones as well. It's not just the secondary, because it's a through school, and Kensington Road is used as a bit of a rat run for people avoiding the no right turn into Stubbington Avenue at the lights there. So yeah, I think I think this will probably come back again to us at some point.
Yeah, we will continue to work with the school to have discussions with them. Obviously, the school has increased from its original secondary school to a through school, and now has the nursery on Hewitt Road as well. So these measures are being put in place to be able to safely cross the children across the road, but that doesn't mean to say that we're going to stop looking at the school and potentially what other interventions can be carried out. And yes, we have worked closely with education and their buildings and facilities team in order to make sure that everybody's fully aware of what we intend to do.
Yes, you put in a massive amount of effort, I know, because I know some of the governors there, and I know you've, as officers, have worked really hard with them. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
That's all of you. That's you included, Joe, even though I left you out before.
Lynn, I didn't doubt that for a minute. I'm sort of mindful of the fact that we're being live streamed, so I just wanted to get that bit over. But the other point I would make in support of it is the fact that this road is a long, straight, allegedly 20-mile-an-hour road. And the fact that it's quite a wide road encourages vehicles to probably exceed. It wouldn't surprise me if you did a speed survey on that road that you wouldn't find very many that are doing 20 mile an hour, and anything that is going to make it safer for the visibility of students crossing that road, I'm completely supportive of.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Yes, I'm happy to go along with all the recommendations. I think that's it, everyone. Thank you very much for your time, your input. Very good. Right, thank you.